Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. I was going to start with the ladies from The View today, but I've decided to go in a different direction. Today is Saturday, I believe the 24th of May. Nothing special about today. And one of my viewers sent me this. I want to get into something's different. And it's maybe people can sense it. Maybe people are feeling some symptoms of it. But there's been a paradigm shift. It's been happening for a while, and it's going to continue to happen. But one of my viewers sent me this.
Does anybody else besides me feel as if time is speeding up, or has sped up, I should say? Like, things really feel off, don't they? They really do. Like, things just feel really off. Like, let this sink in. We are already halfway through the current year. And it seems like this year just started. And the weather seems like it's confused.
So, I'll explain this stuff in a bit. But, he's having some trouble, articulating this. I'm not sure who this person is. But let me.
It really does. Like, everything just feels off. It really does. I know I can't be the only one that feels like this. That just
I asked people about this some time ago. A number of times. Have people having trouble sleeping? Remember, this was, there was one night, and there's so many people who were having trouble sleeping that night for a number of nights, right? Things like this. So, I don't know when that was. He's talking about being halfway through the year, which we're not. But was it June, at the end of June? But, 5 months in, right? We're the fifth, we're at the fifth month. And, it doesn't seem like that. This year's already flown by. The stuff with Trump is like another deal. Let me just finish this guy up here.
everything feels strange. Nothing feels real anymore. Holidays don't even feel the same. Like, nothing feels the same anymore. People feel fake. Like, just everything just feels weird. The vibes just feel different. Does anyone else feel like this, or am I the only one?
Okay, so I'm gonna put this at the end of my last, my not last, but the current journey series, which is 195. Somebody sent me this guy's video here, and I have my Pockets of Future Facebook page and my regular Facebook page, and I get probably three. I don't know. I say 5 messages a week on both of them, and I don't see the Pockets of Future as much. These are all in different toolbars, different browsers. Anyways, the person that was this person was called Concerned Citizen, and then there was a person called Naomi Wolf, who I know a little bit about. She's almost kind of like a truther, but like mainstream something, maybe liberal. I don't know, but she dabbles in truther stuff. Kind of know who she is. And so she posted this, and I don't think this guy looked like maybe he's a right-wing kind of guy. So I've explained what's going on in various ways in terms of, there's going to be changes to it's a change in consciousness. Now, first of all, my meditations are incredible. My spiritual life has taken a huge leap. There's a Babaji gathering that we have in Sajmarg. And there was, right before that, I did 7 sittings in 7 days on the Gratefullness meditation channel. And my whole consciousness shift. My ability to meditate has shifted. And I just flip a switch and I go into a thoughtlessness state. And it's been amazing for me. And, it's been able to give me a lot of clarity. The whole way I perceive the world has changed. And there are times where I look around and it seems like everything's fake. Like this is what this guy was saying here. It's like you see through the illusion of material life. a lot of things. My wife was talking about how, so she said that somebody posted something where, the person was saying one way you can tell that it's illusionary is like, like in a video game, there's nothing going on there until you go into like a room. And he's talking about going into Walmart and there's nobody in the aisle, and then all of a sudden all these like NPCs show up, right? It's kind of like that. Like there's just this level of where you're looking around going, this is not real. Like this is an illusion. You just, you can totally like see through it. Like that's something that people are going to experience from time to time. So I received this yesterday. It was on my Positive Future messages. So I don't know how many days it had been up there because I don't check those as frequently. And I haven't, just, which is where I get the most messages for suggested content. And I just, I've bbeen like just floating. It feels like floating through, this whole year, whatever it is. Of course, there's weird shit going on with Trump, which we'll get into, and all that stuff. But that's, really just a symptom of what's going on. It's like, the whole, there's no, Trump is basically doing stuff there should be a reaction to, and like stopping him. And there's none, right? There's none. He keeps on, he's almost like doing the things until somebody stops him. It's like somebody was like gambling away the whole, earth in a sense. Like, there's this character in the Mahabharata, Yudhishthira, and his, there's this word dharma, which means duty, and the end of there's a being who's in charge of that, right? Doing your duty to God, like sacrificing your egotistical desires to do your duty, right? Where you see these, stories and things like this, movies and whatever characters who don't do what they want to do, they do what's best for everybody else, but it's not what's best for them, But they sacrifice their own egotistical pursuits in the name of Dharma, right? And people used to, there was, before the end of the Mahabharata, people were like, they would follow Dharma, the dharmic laws, and after the Mahabharata, that just ended. People would, instead of doing what was best for, sacrificing their desires and their, personal needs for the collective good and to do what God wanted them to do, everybody just did whatever they wanted. Like that was just, that's what's happening now. And this guy Yudhishthira's mom, his father was cursed and he couldn't perform sexually. If he did, he would die instantly at the moment of orgasm. So there's a lot of curses in the Mahabharata, right? And so his mother gets this mantra. And so this was this idea of the Immaculate Conception. She was able to call these spiritual beings, these deities, like the energy behind the soul behind the sun, or the soul behind, the god of war, these different people, these different souls, these different beings. And she was able to get impregnated by them, right, on a spiritual level. And Yudhishthira's father was Dharma, the deity, the consciousness behind this principle, these doing your duty for God. So to understand this, there is the essence of God, which is one, which is everybody and everything is encompassed in that essence of God. Like people don't understand this monotheism, which is kind of a good thing in a way. But then there are higher developed beings that God doesn't have a mind. God doesn't have an ego. So God is, unobtainable for most people. People who don't have the ability for abstract thought can't even imagine God. They can't even have any basic concept of God. You have to become zero yourself. You have to negate yourself to connect with God directly, like in the truest essence. Like we're all connected to God on a whatever level we can, right? It's like when you talk to your dogs and your dogs look at you and they think that they're trying to understand, but they have some element of understanding what you're trying to say to them. But sometimes it's just too much. You can't explain. Like I can't. My dogs are sitting with me right now. They don't know what the fuck I'm saying, right? They have no idea. So, and they don't care. Like they're just both sleeping. If I say their names, they'll look at me or whatever. If I say puppers, they'll look at me, right? And if I say something like would indicate that we're going to go for a walk, they'll like jump out of bed and they'll get excited and whatever. So, But they're limited. I love them and they're great, but our ability to communicate is limited, right? But they're very devotional, right? When you look at a dog, my dog Lucy, I looked at her. She was a half border collie, mostly border collie, and she just really wanted to serve and do work around the farm. And I wasn't a good master for her. I didn't know how to train a border collie. I did my best. I read about it and I tried to, but we didn't have the situation where she could learn, and she had some natural ability. She just did things border collies do. But I did my best, right? But I looked at her and I was like, I wish I was as devotional as she is to my spiritual life, to God, the way that she is to me. Because, she was really, dogs are amazing at that stuff, right? And just naturally devotional, naturally, good disciples. But, they go running off and do shit and eat chicken shit. I mean, literally on our farm. And then they try to lick you, so, it's limited, right? And so you have these cosmic functionaries that are, what people call angels or divine beings that are, can help you, can make sense of your situation and help you without, I wouldn't say a go-between you and God, spiritual masters and higher developed souls, but they can help elevate you to a higher level where you can access God on a higher and higher level. As you work at the negation of your ego, which is a part of the whole thing, right? You have to minimize your ego. And so this is so these, people look at the various gods in the Hindu tradition, for example. If you're a Christian, say, well, they're that's kind of bullshit. But the nuns my mom used to hang out with, and I used to hang out with a little bit. Like, for example, when they went on trip, they would pray to Saint Christopher. I think it's Saint Christopher. People would wear these different, they had their specific saint that they would pray to for specific things. Is it Saint Christopher? Was one of these saints was supposed to guide you. Like they would say a prayer to Saint Christopher, guide me on my way all the way, or something like this. And so, they even in the Christian tradition, you had different saints that were responsible for different activities. So there is one God, but who can know God on a, not know God, feel God, or experience God in its purest essence? Very few people. Now, right now, you can evolve into it. You have to go through a process to where you can merge with God, where God, you give up your own personal sovereignty, your own identity, and you work for God completely. Being perfect, right? What we don't want to give up is our imperfections, our distorted reality, the things that our own perception. We don't want to give up our limited egotistical pursuits, our own perception of reality, and accept what God sees. We want to see the world the way we see it. We want to be subjective, right? That's why people get so butthurt when I say something, or anybody says something on the internet disagrees with their beliefs. When reality comes in, people reject it. That's why there's something called denial. And beyond that, I want to talk about shock, when people go into shock in a moment. So let me finish this one thing with Yudhishthira. And so Yudhishthira was this amazing leader. He was the eldest brother, and he was the head of this family of the good guys. And he was great at everything in terms of being a king. He was designed to be a king, except he had a gambling addiction. And he gambled away his family fucking twice, his whole family and everything they owned, their whole kingdom, in a rigged game, and a guy who could mentally control the dice, his uncle, who was on the other side. And he gave away everyone, right? He gambled away, everything that he had, including his siblings and his family. He kept on fucking doing it. And then he did it again after he got a mulligan, and he just went back and did it again. And so, it's just, people do shit like that, right? And, Trump is, and on behalf of the people who control the system, gambling away, throwing away all of everything that we have. And nobody's stopping him. There's nothing in the system to stop him. There's bogus lawsuits. It's kind of funny to watch because, when you understand that this is all just an illusion and that Trump's a dope on top of it, it's just silly that this dope would be in the position to just throw away everything that is, our lifestyle and everything along with it. And there's nobody that really can stop them, and they don't seem to even want to, which I'll get into. Like the left and the media, they want to. They're psyched that he's doing it, right? It's almost like this "I told you so" kind of thing on their part, and they think, well, they'll be able to, they'll be in a position to take over after he destroys everything, and it's silly because there won't be anything left, right? So before I get into a state of shock, I had a very weird dream this morning. You had a daughter who committed suicide, Anna, and I was in this kind of a weird place, wherever it was, and it wasn't, any place I was familiar. My wife and I were there, and my wife was very upset, and she was on the phone, and I heard her like being upset, and I couldn't find her, and I found her, and I'm like, "Are you talking to Anna?" And in this dream, I had no idea Anna was dead, so Anna was still alive, and she was like upset at something Anna had told her, and I'm like, "Why are you upset?" And she said, "Well, I don't really want to tell you because just I don't want to burden you with it." And I was like, "I don't know, what could it be, right?" And I said, "She wants to transition from a girl to a boy, like I just guessed." And she goes, "How do you guess?" I'm like, "I don't know. I thought about the the thing that you would think that was most upsetting to me, right?" And so I'm like, "You know what? She's gonna," and she was not living with me like at this time, so she wasn't living. She had moved out to where my ex was when she committed suicide. And so, in the dream, I probably hadn't seen her in some years. And I just had a new phone, and it was huge, and it had AI on it, right? There's in the iPhones, there's a Pro Max, and then there's like a Pro that's smaller, and I get the smaller one because I like, I don't need a big phone. And this phone was big, it was like heavy too, like weighed like a couple pounds. It had AI on it, and I kept on saying, "Call Anna," and it kept on doing different shit. And sometimes it would say, it'd show me all these complex things that I had to do to call her. And then I couldn't access my contacts. And one of the good things about an iPhone, you say, "Call so-and-so." And I was doing, other things were going on. People were coming and bugging me and, asking me to do things. And I had all these things to do, and I'm trying to call Anna. And my idea was, I was like, and I said to my wife, I was like, I guess the good thing about this is it's probably good that she doesn't have kids because she's so, messed up. Like, I mean, maybe this is for the best. I don't know. I'm saying, like, it doesn't matter. It's her life. She's an adult now. She wants to do this. I've accepted, whatever. I was going to call her and give her my blessings and say, you might want to think about this before because you're impulsive. I want to say that you're impulsive, like you do impulsive things. So please, just give it some time. Like, don't rush into doing this thing you want to do just because everybody else is talking about it or doing it, right? So this must be around, the time frame. It would be when this was a big thing in 2022, 23, whatever it is. Whatever, the transitioning thing. Because now it's not. Like, it's, it's faded. And so, but I'm talking to the iPhone just won't fucking call her, right? And I don't know how to, like I said, I don't know how to access the contacts, and I'm like, they're making it so fucking hard. And it showed me how to call somebody, and it flashed a bunch of steps that were so quick that I couldn't even understand them. And then the AI was like talking shit to me, right? Like being like fucking like rude and just, I'm like, and I said to it, "I want you to do this from now on. Like, can you reverse the settings to the way my old phone used to be? Like this one, you don't work. This is like way too hard." And I couldn't call her. They kept on, trying to call her. Of course I couldn't because she's dead, and she wasn't ever going to transition. I mean, like, I don't know what was going on her end. The day that she committed suicide, one of her friends had given her a handgun, which was, I mean, unthinkable that anybody would do that because she was really impulsive and she had these, I mean, over emotional. She was self-destructive and, I mean, just a person that should not own a gun. And I guess she was taking LSD and other drugs, and she had a bad trip, and she got the handgun and shot herself. And so I woke up before I was able to figure out the phone and call her, right? Of course, she transitioned in a different way, and it's a real bummer. And the only thing that I could say about it for me personally, my experience with it, is that I'm just grateful it happened when it did. It's just, if it happened when I was younger and the kids were younger, the loss of a child, it would have broke me. Like, it just would have been something I wouldn't recover from, right? And I've gotten more news lately. My family fell apart in such a way, and everything with my kids. I was just thinking about my mom. My mom took care of my dad. So my mom left my dad when they moved down to Florida. My dad had always wanted to retire. He hated his job. He complained about the commute into work, and he complained about his job as a guidance counselor. Pretty much as far as I can remember, he was always complaining about his job, and he really wanted to retire. I have this Illuminati. I looked through my Illuminati folder for some reason. I guess I was looking for this pyramidal hierarchy pictures I had. And, I've been taking all these folders. I had all these great folders full of images. When I used to make, I used to use the Microsoft Movie Maker, which I really enjoyed using. But they stopped putting it on the newer Microsoft computer. So I would get, some older version, and it didn't work with the new software. And, it would just be, you'd place images in between. Of course, what I have now with Premiere Pro is much more sophisticated, but I don't use most of it because I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. And I don't, I'm not a technical video maker. I learn the few things I need to know. But, it has far more capacity than my videos. But I used to make these image videos, which, I still like to some extent. And I had folders. I have all these folders filled with truther stuff. If I put all of the pictures together, and people actually looked at it and read the articles and looked at the images and all these things, it would be substantial evidence of how fucked up everything is. And so I have these images, and I have two folders called Illuminati. Under, I had too many folders under one master folder, so I created a second one. And that second one, there's another Illuminati, which I don't have the pictures for that in here. The one has a lot of capstones that you're seeing, and I'll transition because I think it's about 20 minutes long. So I'll pull up the other folder, and I'll make another compilation based on that, and then I'll have the two things. But anyways, getting back to it, so my dad hated his job and was miserable, and he was just a miserable fuck, and just incompetent, just an incompetent boob. It's funny. He had a good sense of humor to whatever extent. But he had this retirement dinner where he and other people retired, and it was like a roast, like these old-fashioned roasts. And my dad gave a speech, and he got a lot of laughs, because he had a good sense of humor for that age, dad jokes. I remember one joke. There was like a superintendent there, a principal of the school, and my dad's joke was, let's call him Bob. And he said, I said to Bob, there's nothing I wouldn't do for you, Bob. And Bob said to me, hey, there's nothing I wouldn't do for you, Ralph. And we spent 20 years not doing anything for each other. Like, there was that kind of, that was this, that was the level of humor. And, my dad had we had these old tape recorders. You'd have to push the play and the record button at the same time to record something. They were these little boxes. And, he recorded it. And he had a cassette tape, and he played this thing constantly because he probably wanted to do what I'm doing here. My brother had his own AM radio show. Tony Danza said, I'm a quarter Sicilian. My dad is half Sicilian and half Albanian. And Tony Danza said, every Italian wants a microphone and a tuxedo. Of course, my dad didn't have a tuxedo. He had these goofy suits. He had this lime green jacket he used to wear to work. And I saw him a number of times wearing one yellow sock and one green sock. So, but anyways, he wanted to be, like a comedian and a writer or whatever, these things. And he just never could. He never, he just did this job that he hated. And my parents retired, and my dad and my mom split up. And my dad called me trying to get me to convince my mom to go back to him. And I'm like, well, what have you changed? And he goes, well, lots of things. And I'm like, no, you got to give a fucking answer. You didn't change anything, right? Like, I mean, he couldn't see himself and what he needed to do. But my mom just took him back at some point. And he kept on saying to me when he called me, they had two houses. So he had retired to Boca Raton, Florida, where my grandparents were. And my mom lived with my grandmother, and they sold that house. They had this old house that was kind of not too far from the beach. It was an old army barracks that they had there, like some like military station. They had all these little houses, and it was a okay house, but not it was not great. But it was it was in Boca Raton. They sold that house, and my mom and my grandmother moved in together, and my dad had some other place. And my dad kept on saying, "We gotta get rid of these two houses, Paul. Paul, we gotta get rid of these two houses." I'm like, "We don't have to do anything. I don't barely fucking know you, bro." Like, I was, whatever it was, right? But at some point, my mom took him back. And my kids and I went down to visit her, right? And we, visit them. And it was depressing as hell. My dad was a walking corpse. It was 80 degrees outside, and they had the heat up to 90 degrees. And my dad couldn't see. He couldn't eat. He couldn't watch TV. He couldn't watch TV because he couldn't see. So all the things he liked to do, the nurse would come in and bathe him, right? He was like a skeleton. And what he loved to do was eat and watch TV. Like those were his two things. Like he didn't really have anything else. And he couldn't do them anymore. And they were watching the Florida Marlins baseball game. And they were both in their own bedrooms. And, my kids were fine, but I'm like depressed and like, oh my God, I can't believe, it's just like going back to, I'm like, I can't believe I live with these people, right? And my dad's listening to the baseball game with one TV in his room. And my mom has her own room. And she's listening to the same game, but they're not lined up. So I'm in the living room, and you can hear, like, they both are blaring the game, and they have their doors open, and it's hot as fuck in the house. And I'm like, holy shit, how am I going to get through these couple of days, right? And, my mom was better than my dad. And she was, somewhat religious, and she did this meditation for a while. And she really, got it and was into it, like the Sajmark meditation, and she was just better than him. And, I figured, well, maybe I'll come back and see my mom when my dad dies. Like, just, and I'm hoping she can have a life for herself. Because she's just taking care of him. And she took him back, and, she didn't want to be with him, and yet she, whatever. But then when my dad died, I went to go see my mom, and she clearly didn't want me to come down and see her with the kids, which is weird, for me. But now I kind of get it. Like she just wanted to be at peace and didn't want to have to deal with all this stuff. But, she died about 6 months later. She had really bad health. Her health fell off the cliff. She was in pretty good shape when my dad died. But, they just, she said that she married my dad because she felt sorry for him. I'm like, what the fuck kind of reason is that? You felt sorry for somebody? You subjected yourself to 60 years of life with this incompetent boob, right? My wife and I was watching the show Adolescence, where this kid kills this girl because she calls him it's a Netflix show. Spoiler alert, but it's an epic series. I mean, it's an amazing piece of it's 4 episodes that are just different points of view, and in the world that they create. The first one is the world of the cop investigating the murder. The second one is the school where the kid went to school, and this is in England. The third one is like inside a juvenile detention center, and then the fourth one is the family of the kid, and what they're dealing with after this kid is done. They're now infamous family, right? And they created like this. It's one of those. You're just there in their reality, like it's just, and they're ugly places. Like it's just, in the world, especially the school, it's just all, how mean the kids are and how fucked up they are from the internet and stuff like this, right? And then the last episode, the family's dealing with this kid's, decision, a 13-year-old murderer, right? And, my wife, and I'd seen it before, and I wanted my wife to see it. It's intense, but it's not, it's kind of depressing. And, we were talking about how, as parents, your kids just become whatever they become, right? And you have some influence on it. You're part of it. But then, there's other things that you just don't, right? And, whether they become great or they suck or whatever, a lot of it is just depends on whatever their, some scars are, what they came in with and their destiny is and these things, right? But the world that these kids live in, like this guy's, the cop is trying to investigate, and they have this secret language, with emojis and whatever it is. And the kids are so much different. Their consciousness is so much different than ours. Even if you go into their world, you don't understand it. There's such a lack of communication because their reality, because of growing up on the internet, and those of us who grew up in the real world and we saw computers develop, it's completely different, right? All this stuff, and you can't, you really can't, for the most part, bridge this gap. Even though you are on a computer and you kind of experiencing it on your level, these kids are having a totally different life experience, and it's like they speak a foreign language that you can't communicate. There's almost the inability to communicate with them, their perception and everything, and they don't want anything to do with you and this thing because they just, it's like they're aliens, right? It's like you're alien to them, right? But in all that, as we're entering into this change, whatever has happened, there's a consciousness change. There's been a shift of something, and it's substantial. And, in that shift, there's going to be material consequences, but it's like you're in a dream, right? It's like, that's what it feels like. You're sleepwalking through a dream. And it's for more and more people, they're going to experience this whatever way. Like they're going to feel like they're in a video game or a dream or whatever it is, where things aren't real. And, like your consciousness too, your mind is in a different state. But there's this thing called shock, right? Like there's, in terms of being a truther, like this is the like kind of something I've never talked about before. But if you're a truther, if you're what, we call a truther, you're a person seeking the truth. And you're looking at all the lies, like the things that you were told as a kid, in school and by your parents, and your religion is a lie, and your education is a lie, and your parents are living a lie, and their perception of reality, the American dream, is a lie, and your everything about it, the history that is a lie. Your unnatural food is a lie. Like everything, everything is. Is an illusion, and there's a bigger illusion here, and then there's just the lies of man, and then there's the third dimensional reality, which is a deception because it's not it's not your true reflection of what you are as a soul. And so in that, people are looking for truth. Some people are looking for truth. Some people just don't want to stir anything up. They don't want to, they're just like, let's not even, I don't even want to go there, right? Like that's how they feel. And I've been having trouble. My viewer count is down, and YouTube's whatever. I got a whole thing to talk about that in terms of what the YouTube part of it, and part of it is to do with the Trumpers and whatever, the right wing hijacking, whatever we call now the truth community and all these things. But the biggest piece is that I'm saying that the system cannot be saved, and nobody wants to hear that. Like I don't even want to hear it. Like it's on one level, right, for what that means. There's a movie, some bullshit movie called The Fountain of Youth. It looks pretty awful. That's just released on Apple. But you have these adventure movies, right, where people are looking for something, right? The Lost Ark in the first Indiana Jones, and these are quest movies where there's a quest for something, and they try to make it like the end of it when they complete the quest that there's some sort of happily ever after, but that's bullshit. There's no happily ever after. That doesn't exist. There's no, you're just doing work for God, right? This idea that you're going to go to heaven, and they tell these jihadists that they're going to get 70 virgins and a mule in heaven where they have no dick, right? Like, what are you going to do with 70 virgins? I mean, in fact, what does that even mean to be a virgin as a soul, right? What's that? It's silly. There's all these promises, all the promises you get, the Mormons promising that you're going to be king or queen of your own, planet and heaven. It's just bullshit things, right? It's things that appeal to you here, but your soul, they don't appeal to your soul because your soul doesn't have a body. It doesn't care about such things, right? You don't need comforts and pleasures when you don't have a body. And so all these religions that sell you this idea of comforts and pleasures and heaven and happiness, you don't need any of those things. Happiness is a state of being that is the opposite of sadness. The opposite of depression, right? The opposite of feeling bad and feeling, feeling what you feel when you're happy, right? Happiness is a physical condition because you feel the opposite. If you don't feel the opposite, then you don't know what happiness is, right? Every one of these conditions is based in the opposite. Like you only can experience pleasure if you've experienced pain. You can't have a pleasure experience unless it has to be something better than what you normally experience. If you were experiencing constant pleasure, then it wouldn't stand out. It would just be how you felt, right? There are people who are happy all the time. They just have more serotonin, and they don't know. They're just naturally wake up happy. And I have become one of those people. I was not before, but either way, there are truths in life. There's this thing called you going into a state of shock, and there's different levels of this. But there's like people saying, you're in shock, right? And we know about PTSD. People go into war, and there's a state of being that you can get into, a state of consciousness. There's various states of consciousness that you go into as a defense because you can't handle the truth, right? Like you can't handle this truth. And a lot of people, the idea of the society collapsing or the experience of it when it happens or what's happening now, they can't see. Lots of people in the truth community, maybe many of you, who if that happens, that you just give up, right? There are things where people just quit on life. This thing with my mom, like my dad dying, and he was a piece of shit. She didn't love him, felt sorry for him, whatever, was burdened by him. And, but when he died, she was like, all right, that's it for me. And she was just, whatever. She died a year later, 6 months, whatever it was. But she was just waiting to die. Like her work was over. That whole, whatever weird dynamic relationship there, whatever her destiny was, whatever it was. This happens all the time with spouses. One of them dies and the other one dies, 3 months later. They die in a sense there. You can't reinvent yourself, right? I mean, when my family collapsed and I went through a divorce and all this shit happened with Doge turning into a piece of shit, fucking failure. And, not rising up to be the master they could have been. And the Sajmark system collapsing into this debacle of heartfulness and moving back from India and starting over. I have a completely different life now. The YouTube channel taking off, remarrying, right? And everything's different. My son has found a job that he likes and he's going to move out soon. And, that whole life was, I planned on an intergenerational family farm where my kids would live and get married and have their own houses, but there'd be a community and everybody would support each other. And so, there was all of those things. And I thought that was what's going to happen, but it didn't happen. I'm basically estranged from my kids. My son and I, we have our relationship is good now, but we're not close. And my other kids, I don't talk to them, and it's all of it. And it's like that's a past life, and you have these things like you have to reinvent yourself, right? Something ends, and you're in a new phase, you're in a new season of your life, right? But there's just so many times you can reinvent yourself. As you get older, there's the idea of a personal crisis or a family crisis where you have this event where there's such a big event that everything before it is different, and then this event happens, and then everything else changes, right? That things can be like having a kid, being married, getting a great job, moving to another place, right? Or a death of somebody, or just, any number of things. But if it happens collectively, where there's an event that affects so many different people, an extinction level event, or a collapse of an economy, or, something, 9/11, or some of these other things, these these hallmark events, these milestone events that everything's different afterwards, like COVID, right? And everything has their way of coping with the change, right? And so I asked the AI about shock, and it talked about personal shock, right? Physical shock, where there's a person goes into shock. It means the body doesn't get enough blood flow to the vital organs, such as brain, heart, lungs, deprives the organs of oxygen and nutrients. Not treated quickly can lead to permanent organ damage or death. And there's all these different kinds of physical shock. And I'm like, well, that's not what I'm asking about. So I asked about psychological shock. When a person goes into shock due to being overwhelmed by trauma, it often refers to psychological shock or emotional shock, while it shares the term shock with life-threatening medical condition you described earlier, circulatory. You, he described earlier, or whatever, this fucking AI. They, them. The underlying mechanism and immediate dangers are different. However, psychological shock can have significant physical manifestation, can be serious response to trauma. What happens to a person? Underlying mechanisms, fight or flight or freeze response when faced with overwhelming trauma. The body's acute stress response system is activated intensely. And disassociation, a key element of psychological shock is often disassociation. Atomic nervous system dysregulation, hormonal surge, emotional, psychological numbness or detachment, disbelief or denial, confusion or disorientation, anxiety or panic, agitation or restlessness, withdrawal, intense emotional reactions, altered perception of time, rapid heartbeat, rapid breathing, sweating, trembling or shaking, muscle tension, nausea, dizziness, weakness or fatigue, changes in body temperature, headache, blurred vision, changes in appetite or sleep. And there's different levels of this, right? But there are things that you can be told or you could find out, and they're too much. They're overwhelming. There are situations where, whether it's some big traumatic thing, this happens often to pretty much everybody who goes to war, where you see things that are so abhorrent, you see things that are so traumatic that you can't deal with them. The cops show up at your door and say your kid's dead, right? And, any number of things, right? I dated a girl who's, there was like, I think 5 kids, and the oldest brother and the favored daughter, the daughter was there was 2 girls and there was four boys, 6 kids. And the favored daughter and the older kid were out, and the older kid wrecked the car, and he came home covered in glass. Everyone else was watching TV, and said that the daughter was dead, and the family never recovered. They were all fucked up. And you have these events where you're just never the same afterwards. It affects you in some way, right? It's it's a devastating thing, and people have these personal things, these personal, COVIDs. There's personal 9/11s. There's personal World War II or whatever it is, right? Where they have these events, or family events and things, where you just can't deal with them. Like people can't deal with reality. That's why people, are using drugs, and most people are on psychological medications, and people use alcohol and drugs and things like this because they can't deal with reality. Reality is too fucking painful, and the lives that they're living and the situation they're in is so unnatural and so, not what they're designed to do, that people, can't handle basic information. And this idea that our system will collapse will be too much, as it becomes a reality, will be too much for many people. It just will be. You disrupt people's routines and their lives, especially as they get older. You go camping or whatever it might be, and it's overwhelming. Like the ground's too hard to sleep on, and you're out in nature, so that's not even a good example, because there's good things about being out in nature, but there's things in your lifestyle you can't live without, and there's comforts and there's things, and going to the store, and going things that people do on a routine basis, where they go get a cup of coffee on a Starbucks like place, wherever their place is. They get a cup of coffee, they go to a place for long. They have these things that they do. They have these little things they look forward to, watching TV, being on the computer, things. Imagine if there was all that just stopped right now. Like everything, there's no electricity, there's no computer, there's no phone, like all that shit. Like there was some EMP went off, and then everything else. There's, within a week, there's nothing in the grocery store. There's some crisis. Meteor hits the, whatever, war, and everything you knew as life is over. And you have, you're in this state of shock, and you got to come out of it to survive. And most people won't. They'll give up, right? It's just, it's a knockout blow. It's too much for them, right? There's things that you can, hear that are so painful that you just go into a state of denial. Like you don't remember them. You can't, you can't accept it. You can't digest something. You can't, it's just too much, right? And this, I've seen this happen to people. There's a guy who was a preceptor. He did the Sajmarg meditation. He had one kid. His wife and him were, they're Indian people, very close to their families, and both their dads died in India within like a 6-month period, and they were reeling. The woman quit meditating, like she was pissed at God, and the guy, they weren't functioning. They weren't functioning as a family, and they had one son, and the son it was a teenage son, and there was a neighbor who had little kids, another Indian guy, and he took all of them to the ocean, and the son was sucked out into the ocean by a rip current, and so this guy, lost everything. He didn't. His parents, his dad just died, and then him and his wife lost his kid. And I went to the funeral, and the guy was like a fucking wreck. Like he showed up, and like you could tell, like he didn't recognize people. He was like a zombie. He was crying and just like I was like, this guy's never recovering. He had one kid, and this whole thing, his life has crumbled. And he was a nice guy, but I could tell that he was not going to be able to deal with this. Right? It was too much for him. It was overwhelming. It was like he was just going to pray to die. Like it was, this happens to people all the time where they just want to leave this earth, right? Life is just too fucking painful. There's just things that happen that, the unthinkable happens, and then, you're in a state of shock, whatever that means for the specific situation and person. And that's what's coming for everybody. That's what's here. That life as we know it's going to change, and there'll be people who can adjust to it. I mean, no one's going to adjust to it perfectly. It's not going to be great for anybody, but it's for the best because we can see how bad the system is. Like, I think almost everybody can agree that the system's fucked, and people are going in the wrong direction. We're getting worse. Idiocracy has set in, and there's just people are just way worse. Less, the family's been decimated. There's less love. There's less compassion. There's less empathy. People are lower functioning, and it's just getting, and all the bad qualities, entitlement and selfishness and egoism, and these distorted realities and weaknesses. I think everyone can see that on some level, but can't imagine life without the system. And everyone's addicted to stuff that they can't imagine living without. And so it's too much for people. And so, when people talk about like this guy was talking about in the little clip, that things have changed. Yeah, there's a paradigm shift, and there's a shift in consciousness, and that's going to come with drastic material changes. And whatever, however that unfolds and whatever, that plays out, most people are not going to be able to deal. Like, that's just the way it is. And so, the best way to deal with anything is to connect to the divinity within you and have a spiritual life that's always there, because that's a constant. A relationship with God, a relationship with your soul is constant. Your physical life can change. The people can leave it. The people can, people come and go, jobs come and go, where you live comes and goes, pets come and go, all these things, right? Everything in your life is, subject to change. There's always the potential for loss. And even the system, like there's nothing that's too big to fail. There's nothing that can't be destroyed. Everything will be destroyed at some point or another. Everything dies. And so in the material world, everything dies. But on a spiritual life, your soul is eternal, at least in terms of the length of the universe. And so as much as there's any consistency, your soul is there. It survived, in most cases, previous lives, and will survive future lives, and your soul will keep on going on. And so if you want something to hang your hat on, right, something that's consistent, it's a connection to your soul. Anyways, let's get into this bullshit stuff, this not important bullshit stuff I'm about to cover here. Okay, so let's start here with all this other stuff. You're all wrong. The Earth is neither flat or round. It's fucked. Good meme somebody sent me that goes along with what I'm presenting today.
Let's talk about what's going on, because Original Sin, the book claiming that
Original Sun.
Democrats covered up President Biden's declining condition, is out today. It's co-written by Jake Tapper, and Joe Biden's granddaughter posted her review ahead of its release, claiming it's all lies, and it relies on unnamed anonymous sources pushing.
Just read a copy of this silly book, and if anyone is curious for a review from someone who lived it firsthand, this book is politically fairy smut for the permanent professional chattering classes, the ones who really enter the arena but profit from the spectacle of those that do. Put it simply, it amounts to a bunch of unoriginal, uninspired lies written by irresponsible, self-promoting journalists out to make a quick buck. It relies on unnamed, anonymous sources, pushing a self-serving false narrative that absolves them from any responsibility for our current national nightmare. All of this is at the expense of man so completely good and honest that it's impossible for these people to ever understand the why or how of it all. There are real stories to be told, and one day they will. I suspect history will reward the truth. So, this is granddaughter, so whatever. But, Jon Stewart did a bit on this, and he put together a funny compilation, his team did, of Jake Tapper promoting his book. And it's brutal, because he talked about it. I saw him do this once, and I said, oh, he's got a new book coming out. I didn't realize he did it every night for like a month. And then CNN promoting it and the rest of it. Of course, Fox News gobbled it up. But, Jon Stewart's point was, if this was a cover-up, it was the worst cover-up in history because we all knew. But you all didn't know in the beginning, right? Everybody, kind of saw it in the beginning, but refused to see it. But Naomi Biden is leaving out the fact that CNN was one of the Biden shills that covered up all this shit for years. Jake Tapper and all his people. We could obviously see the guy wasn't up to this job. And she's trying to make it sound like the rest of us don't know the guy was senile. And, we now know that he has prostate cancer and developed stage, that it's gone malignant, and it's, it's metastasized into whatever, his bones and shit, right? So, they're just lies on top of lies, right? And so, of course, we saw it. You didn't see it, And so it's silly. And, she's talking about CNN and Axios, who, Trump would call fake news. And now she's calling them fake news. It's funny how things turn out to be fake news when it says shit about, things you disagree with, right? You go, hey, look at the news when it agrees with you. But as soon as they turn on you, which they inevitably do, all of a sudden they become fake really fast.
A self-serving false narrative that absolves them of any responsibility for our current national nightmare. The Daily Show's Jon Stewart.
Oh, that's right. They do this here. I'm not going to share this because Daily Show, they're very good on, big on. Here's the very last bit of it. That's where he says this.
He knew.
Where he says we all fucking knew about being senile, but they didn't know. They're laughing here. You say it's the worst cover-up in history because they all fucking knew. But they're not saying that because they didn't ever say that, right?
So, should anonymous
Joy gave a little laugh, but
sources who talked to Tapper have spoken up about their concerns while he was in office, while he was still in office? And my other question is,
everybody knew. You guys covered it up. That's the fact. You guys are all fucking blood on your hands. The Trump presidency is your fucking fault. Because, if you guys had if the Democrats had put out a real person and they didn't, or if they let Trump win the second term, it wouldn't be as bad as this term. Trump is closer to death. He's vindictive as fuck. He's bitter for those 4 years of being what he considers false persecution. And, he's going full Trump. And during those 4 years, Trump was able to build a team of people who now are all fucking cult followers who he has now put in these positions, which he wouldn't have done his second term. I mean, if his second term was in 2020, there wouldn't be all these people where he could tap them for jobs and shit, right? I'm having some issues with the mic today. It flashes, which means there's a little bit of interference. So, but hopefully I didn't miss anything. I usually keep an eye on it. I saw it out of the corner of my eye. But anyways, this is on you guys. Like, you guys covered up for Joe Biden, and you had these two hand grenades that were fucking Joe Biden and Kamala Harris that went off in your fucking faces right before this election, and now you have Trump. Stop fucking pretending that you're not responsible, right?
Why is this important to know now?
Yeah.
Well, that's what some people want to know.
What a fucking, wow, Jesus Christ, what a incredible, she just cracks the code. She just opens up and pushes it through. What a fucking incredible, oh my God, Whoopi, holy shit. It was mind-blowing. Let's hear that again. Let me digest that one. It's such cutting edge.
Why is this important to know now?
Yeah.
Well, that's what some people want to know.
Because it just seems to me,
Yeah.
you know, we got a lot of stuff to be concerned about at the moment.
So I
Yeah.
list them?
Yeah.
So I list them?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay,
please. Yes.
here's the Trump's atrocities. I'm going to list them for you. Cutting Medicaid.
Boom. Yes, bring it, Joy. Bring the truth, Joy. Fucking Joy Behar, bringing the truth. Boom. Cutting Medicaid.
Well, this is what we're concerned about now.
Oh, I got you. Okay.
Cutting
I'll
Medicaid, slashing funding for cancer research.
Boom. Fuck cancer. I mean, fuck people with cancer or who are going to get it. Fuck that.
Rising prices because of tariffs.
Boom. Fucking terrorists. Yes, Joy. Yes.
Dismantling USAID, which helps children and people who are poor around the world.
Exactly. Fucking yes, Joy. You're nailing it.
Fears of recession, destroying due process, ending birthright citizenship, dismantling the Department of Education,
Yes, all of those things.
rolling back regulations on air and water quality,
Yeah.
destroying our relationships with allies like
Yep.
Canada and the UK,
Yes.
and targeting
Boom. Yep.
his political opponents.
Preach.
And that not
Preach. Preach, Joy.
only that, but he also said that Joe Biden has stage 9 cancer. Oh, really? Where did he come up with that? When is Jake Tapper going to write a book about the cognitive decline of the person who is in charge right now?
Whoa. Okay. So this is fucking stupid because the first piece to this is there's a lot here, right? They make it sound like they don't cover Trump enough. Like CNN, MSNBC, and the rest of the fucking lamestream media, what Trump calls the fake news, they've covered Trump more than when Joe Biden was president. When Joe Biden was destroying the country and doing his bullshit, looting Hunter Biden bullshit, all the things Joe Biden did. When Joe Biden was like fucking up all these things. They talked about Trump more than they talked about Joe Biden. It was 2/3 Trump, 1/3 Joe Biden. And, they have to cover other things. There's other news stories. They're making it sound like the CNN and all these news media channels haven't covered all the things you just said exhaustively. They have. And it doesn't mean shit. Nobody's changing anything. It's just fucking words. Like, doesn't matter. This Joe Biden thing is just words. The Democratic Party is not going to be destroyed by this fucking debacle that they put out there. A senile fucking Alzheimer's, Parkinson's having candidate who also had, prostate cancer for God knows how long, who certainly wasn't up to the job, and he sucked beforehand. It wasn't like he was great beforehand. These guys talked about how he was a great president constantly, lying to their audience, gaslighting them. He was a piece of shit. And then he vindictively put in Kamala Harris as an insurance policy. And when they fucked him, which he perceived as they fucked him for actually, saying the truth, which is he was unfit for office, he stuck the Democratic Party with Kamala Harris, who proceeded to loot $2 billion of donation money because she had no chance of winning, and, misappropriating this money, going to many Washington, D.C. Democratic insiders. And that whole thing was a fucking debacle, after other bad shit that the Democratic Party did. And the Democratic Party is going to survive them. And the Republican Party is going to survive Trump. And if Trump does what we all think he's going to do, there'll be a Democratic president with a Democratic Congress and a Democratic Senate in 4 years, 3.5 years. 4 years. So, you know, I mean, it's nothing of this matters. It fucking doesn't matter. Your words, my words, none of it matters. It's just people talking, powerless people talking about shit they can't do anything about. That's all it is. It's having a fucking take, right? And you guys suck at having takes because your take is that Jake Tapper can't write a book about Biden because they're not talking about Trump enough. Fuck. You know, they talk about Trump constantly, and what difference is it going to make, right? And so that's your take. That's your cutting edge take. Why now? Well, because you guys were covering it up when, you know, you couldn't say it 2 years ago. You weren't allowed to say it. That's why now. The rest of us saw it. I saw it in 2019. I go, well, this guy's fucked in the head. I didn't know he had Parkinson's, but I certainly knew he had dementia. Anybody could see it. And if he didn't have dementia, he still sucked. He was a snoozling, groping, weird motherfucker, right? And so this is what people watch. And I ate breakfast just a little bit ago, and I turned on whatever it was, CNN, and there's a panel of people, including Montel Williams for some reason, and they were talking about, you know, the stuff to do with South Africa, which I think I have a few more things to cover here about that. And they cut to commercial, and they said that the ladies of The View were told to tone it down by their ABC overlords, but they didn't, and wait to see what happens. And I'm not going to cover it here. I'm sure I'll find that for my next video tomorrow, because there's so much View shit you can cover. But but they're going to talk truth to power. We're not toning it down. But they're fucking imbeciles. Like, it's the lowest level of take. It's amazing they still have an audience. I mean, how many people watch this shit, right? It's like silly. Yeah, it's okay to write a book about Joe Biden being senile, but it isn't going to do anything. And yeah, he should have done it 2 years ago. And that was part of Jon Stewart's take as well. They should have reported it when it mattered. And it didn't. You know, they didn't do that. And then it's after the fact, and they're all culpable. All of them, right?
I'd like to respond to that because a factor in why we're in the situation we're in is because Joe Biden decided to stay in the race. And I want to speak to Jake Tapper and Alec Thompson specifically because I'm friends with both of them, colleagues with both of them. And I don't think there is anyone who could credibly accuse, especially Jake Tapper, of not critically covering Donald Trump for the last 10 years. He's one of the top journalists in this country. He moderated that debate.
Really?
By the way. This is where I take issue with some folks on the left. We stand with journalists. We stand with the free press when they're going after their opponents, like Donald Trump.
Oh, my gosh, she's agreeing with what I said about
Trump. But when they critically cover Democrats as, oh, no, they're lying. It's fairy dust. It's not true.
Fake news.
To point out that was his granddaughter.
And by the way, with the family,
Okay.
I take exception.
Okay.
Anyone's going to
Yeah.
defend their
Yeah.
family.
Okay.
But with political figures who are coming out and attacking these two journalists, how is that pro-democracy? How is it pro-Fourth Estate to
Well,
say,
wait a second.
oh, but when you come after Democrats,
I saw him the
suddenly
other
you're a
day, and
liar.
all he's doing is hawking his book on the CNN. And he's flanked by other people, Ryan Stelter and Van Jones, also hawking his book. When did CNN become a place to hawk your book?
It's always been a hawk your book place. What are you talking about? You don't think they've ever had anybody on that wrote a book or they're hawking a book? And, you know, none of it fucking matters, Joy. I mean, you think that talking about Donald Trump was going to stop him? Like, everyone's been talking about Donald Trump obsessively for the past 9 years on the left. All the mainstream media, Donald Trump is the center of the fucking universe, of the political universe for 9 fucking years. And you didn't stop him. You had 4 years to put him in jail, discredit him in some way, and produce a quality candidate, a quality presidency. I mean, even with Joe Biden being senile, his handlers could have done a good job so that Donald Trump wouldn't have they could have done differently on immigration, and they could have done differently on the economy and inflation so that Donald Trump wouldn't have had, and he could have had a better candidate than Kamala. Joe Biden could have stepped down. But none of those things happened, and it doesn't matter. They were going to put Trump in no matter fucking what. This part of a fucking, voting doesn't fucking matter. None of this shit matters. It's part of a plan. If it isn't part of a plan, it's part of a divine plan. Everything's part of a divine plan. None of it you can do nothing about it. But sit here and fucking squawk, right?
Blitzer coming out with a cookbook.
But by the way,
What's coming out with a cookbook? Bam.
he didn't publish it at the time to respond to the Jon Stewart of
Yeah.
it. people said they weren't willing to talk on the record at the time because of fear of retribution. And I think that speaks to a bigger problem in our government. The people who work for powerful figures feel like they cannot come out with the truth about their concerns, and they have to wait till later,
and
whether
honestly,
it's Trump or Biden.
This list that Joy has,
She actually made many valid points there.
the way you get a focus on that is when you win elections. And the only people that were coming out on the record critical of President Biden was when Representative Dean Phillips ran and said, until we get someone better to come out and run against Biden, who he raised concerns about. Yeah. About Biden in the Democratic Party. He said, until we're willing to have this conversation out loud, the special counsel, Robert Hur, who took like the biggest attack when all he said was, there are some things here that are concerning on these tapes. Now they've been revealed and everyone's like, let's not focus back on that. The problem is there's a trust issue here. There's a massive trust issue with the voters.
There has always been a mass trust issue because
you're all lying pieces of shit, right? Back when he was snoozling and groping women, and Whoopi came out and defended him and say he's a man of a particular age, and he's being a little bit too familiar, was what she said. Like that's we people like that who would be a little bit too huggy or whatever. I'm like, no, he's an out and out fucking freak, right?
Politicians,
he's a freak off, right? Joe Biden has his own freak offs.
Media, nobody does what they're supposed to do. Now, I say...
Except for you guys at The View. You guys bring it every fucking 4 days a week.
For me, listen, he's 83. So he's a little stumbly, he's a little rumbly.
He's a little crumbly and his tumbly.
Can't point to anything that he's done that he did.
No, but that he's running for his next 4 years.
Yeah. But I'm saying...
What about the times he shit his pants, Whoopi? Did that count?
I want, not you, but I want somebody to tell me, well, when did you know it was bad?
2019, when he first fucking was walking around stage, challenging people to push-up contests and saying he was going to take some guy outside and slap the shit out of him, or yelled at that soft-spoken NPR woman when he's showing signs of fucking mental breakdown. And he was snoozling and groping women when he was swearing them in, children and shit. Like that time, or the fact that he plagiarized himself in 1982 when he ran for president the first time, and nobody wanted him as president. And three times he ran for president, nobody wanted him. He never polled in double digits. He was never a serious candidate for president. He was a bumbling oaf under Obama. He was clearly breaking down physically and mentally. And CNN did a hit piece saying, "Fuck this guy." In 2015, he's not ready, which I showed you in my long compilation and all that shit, right? And they did a hit piece on him along with Jon Stewart and David Letterman, making fun of him being a fucking groper. And yet they dusted him off in 2019 and said he's better than any of these other fucking stooges we have. He's the only guy who can beat Trump. And let's cover for the fact that he's got Parkinson's and fucking cancer of the fucking scrotum and run him, right? So, like, yeah. We all fucking knew. Like, I knew in 2019, and I wasn't the only one. We looked at him like, holy shit. I was like, I couldn't believe they were running the guy. When he was debating and they were laughing at him, when Cory Booker and Kamala Harris were laughing at him because he was so fucked in the head. I showed all these clips, right? And, over and over again. We all saw it. Like, the debates. Anybody watching debates were like, this guy is too old to be fucking president.
If you knew, why did you wait?
Yeah. So can I answer that?
Can I get in
he
for a
said
second?
that it was.
Why didn't you know? Is the bigger question, or did you know and did you just fucking lie about it?
He moderated the debate.
Yes, but that's not. I'm sorry, baby. That's not what.
Wait for Sonny. Sonny's the best.
I'm talking about. I'm talking about.
What are you talking about?
If you're telling me that.
What are you talking about, Willis?
Hundreds of people knew that he was not able to do his
job.
Hundreds.
Everybody in the country. 79% of Americans by January of 2024 knew. And even before that, when he was falling off his bike, people were like, the American people were like, Jon Stewart said, we all knew. And you guys fucking played that clip. How many people knew he was, Stephen A. Smith, who's been on your fucking show, who doesn't, he sucks at, his takes on sports aren't good. And he's venturing into politics, and he called Joe Biden out. Way before, like a year before. Everybody in the truth community, all fucking knew. Why don't you say, hey, we should start listening to the people that knew? Why don't you say that instead of saying, why didn't you guys say anything, right? Because plenty of people did, and we were silenced.
then where the hell was
I think
everybody?
He did his job. He did his
Well,
job.
that's the point.
This is the thing. Now, Jake is my former colleague. I know him well. He's a friend. He's a terrific journalist. He said that 99% of what is reported in the book was discovered after the election. So I think we can put that part to bed about journalists holding on information until so that they can
Yeah, but we all fucking do.
make money off their book. What I do think
You can say what you see with your eyes, which was what people could have said, which, you know, there was an emperor has no clothes kind of thing going on here.
we should be very, very concerned about are the people that were in the Trump administration that did hold on to information about how Trump was conducting the presidency so that they could make money off of their book. We're talking about former National Security Advisor John Bolton, who came on this show hawking his book, and I told him, why didn't you say something before? Former Attorney General Bill...
He did say something as soon as Trump fired him. You know, like, every one of these people that writes books about or comes out, it's always after they get fired, because they're all worthless pieces of shit. That's what it is, Sonny. Just say it. Everybody's a worthless piece of shit. That is, they're with a guy until... they're not, right? And they see things like that guy with Fetterman, and they see disturbing things. You guys had Fetterman on, and this guy who's a substantial person, Fetterman's handler, he's one of the best people because they knew Fetterman was a mess, and he was saying the guy is not functioning. The guy is a fucking absolute mess. That a senator went to visit him in the hospital, and he was catatonic, making figure eights in the air with his finger the whole time the guy was talking to him. And you guys had him on, and he couldn't even read. He couldn't even listen to what you were saying. He had to use a tablet to communicate with you. And yet he's supposed to be doing this high-level job. It's supposed to be, one out of 100 fucking senators. He's one out of that, of all the Americans that get that job, right? And that guy can't even fucking understand what people are saying. He needs closed captions for his native language. He doesn't understand his native language. And so you're all pieces of shit that went along with this stuff. And the degradation of the idiocracy of America that nobody can stop its collapse. It's gone too fucking far. It's out of everyone's hands, and there's nothing stopping it. And you guys are just whining about little fucking shit like it's important, and it's fucking not. I don't think anything that I say is important here. It is to some of you. It affects you guys and whatever. You have your epiphanies and whatever, benefit you get from whatever I say or do. Certainly the Sajmark method and the connecting to divinity within you is great. It's transformative. It's, to me, everything, the most important thing. But I don't know how much that's going to be done now, given the state of, just everything I've said about the collapse of the Sajmark system into the heartfulness debacle. And I don't know. It's just a lot of things are unknown because they haven't happened yet. But I don't know what affects that even with my talking about that, I keep on doing it because the results are not mine. I do the work, the results are God's. That's, keeps me sane, right? But I'm about to say something profound. Let's get this thing started here first.
Joining us now, New York Times Washington correspondent Charlie Savage. He's bylined on the piece, and Ashley Parker and David Frum are still with us. So, Charlie, help us understand what this chief of staff to Tulsi Gabbard was trying to do.
So we're talking about Joe Kent. He's also the pending nominee to lead the National Counterterrorism Center. Right now he's serving.
Okay, so let's get to the part that I want to get to here. See what it says.
After this was released and after there was reporting, or after reporters got a handle on this document showing that the intelligence community did not agree with the assessment, did not have evidence to back up the assessment that the Venezuelan government was directing Tren de Aragua. Tulsi Gabbard fired the intelligence officials who oversaw that memo.
Yeah, so that's,
and this is all closing around one final and most dangerous possibility, because the people who are involved.
So, this is what I was talking about the other day. That, that reporter, or this woman who used to be the ambassador to South Africa, was saying that it's too bad Trump doesn't have people around him who could give him a better view of what's really going on, historical context of South Africa. Because there are certain things you can't say even if they're true. Like there's like things with school shootings. We know that they're taboo. The Alex Jones things. No matter what you think about something, there's some things you can't say. And there are times in your life where you could tell the truth. I mean, it's why Joe Biden's team released this idea that he has terminal cancer just when Jake Tapper's book was, coming out with some deeper level truths about him. And it became like, well, he's dying of cancer, bro. Like, so there's certain things you can't say. And, one of those things you can't say is that there's reverse racism in South Africa, even if it's true. Even it's not true because the white people still own 70% of the land. The white people have the majority of resources. They're 9% of the population, and they came in and colonized the indigenous people. And that's historically true. But Nelson Mandela was like, I think he was a piece of shit. I can say stuff, but because I don't care and I don't have it, whatever. But I don't have it. I don't believe he was great. I don't, my knowledge of the place is limited. But we do know that you had oppressed people, and if the oppressed people turned on their slave masters, you can't blame them. No movie would say, oh, if you saw white people abusing black people for 100 years, and then the black people had an uprising and killed the white people who were abusing them, you would say, yeah, that's, you could frame the movie. And if you're a white person, maybe you're like, oh, I take exception to that or whatever. But the reality is, you can't come in and whine about white reverse racism when Trump never was a proponent to stop the genocide that was happening in these various countries based on the apartheid and the original English, because he's not on that side, right? Trump is on the side of rich, wealthy landowners, and they're his friends, and they're running to him. Like somebody wrote me a comment saying, well, you don't know, the farmers are so important, a bunch of shit like this. And I mean, they might have had some legitimate points, but the reality is that these people were oppressed, the black people were oppressed by a small minority of white people in ways that was, horrible. And, as white people, sometimes, if I'd had white people come to me and say that black people wanted to be slaves, they were volunteering to be slaves in America, like shit like that, or they were here all along in America and white people didn't get them out of Africa and these things. There's these various theories absolving white people from the brutal slavery. The only thing you can absolve white people for, not white people, slave owners, because not everybody was a slave owner. Not every white person is a minority of white people that were slave owners. But all these other various people, Native Americans and black people in Africa and other places all around the world, all took slaves. There's leaders that took slaves or made slaves and subjects of their people. All kingdoms are slave-oriented. A king isn't... You can have good kings, but it's a bad system, right? And it's, all these things where there's people in power who can get wealthy on the work of the collective always end up abusing wealth and power. It's just, very seldom do you have a spiritual person. There's some guy who was a king in India, and he was also a saint. And it was so rare that someone would be a king and also a saint. Master Charji, the third master of the system, told this story about how everyone was waiting to get into heaven. And again, heaven is not whatever. I don't believe in heaven the way that people do in the Christian tradition. We believe in what's called the brighter world, which they're etheric worlds. But anyways, just let me tell the story. It's just so whatever. And so all these people are waiting to get to heaven. And there's St. Peter at the gates of heaven. And there's a long line. And some guy pulls up in a limousine, some rich guy with a crew of people. And this rich person's escorted all the way to the front of the line. And this guy's getting pissed, right? This guy's like, 200 people deep. He finally gets up to St. Peter and he says, what the fuck? Like, I understand that rich people got all these privileges on earth and got all these, advantages. But even here, why would they get advantages here? And the guy said, because people like you are a dime a dozen in heaven. You guys, who are poor and are whatever, suffering, You guys, well, it's easier for you to find God. When a rich person comes here, they're special, because I mean that saying, it's easier for a camel to pass through the head of a needle than a rich person to get into heaven. And so, anyways, the thing I was going to say that's profound here is what was interesting about the Trump presidency was this: when he was elected in 2016, all these liberal fucks, made Rachel Maddow being the big one, but all of them were, sitting there freaked out, miserable, crying. All the liberal people, all the bullshit liberal motherfuckers were weeping. Just all the pundits who got it wrong. It was an absolute beautiful thing that Trump, who was an obnoxious blowhard, reality TV star, fake billionaire, bad businessman, obnoxious person, he was horrific, was elected. And it discredited all these people that said that he was going to lose. It discredited the polls, all the things, right? And it was a wonderful thing. I mean, not in terms of politics or America, just because all these people who have been sucking for years, the lamestream media, the fake news, had to eat shit. Like, not only that night, for quite a while afterwards, right? But then, 8 years later, Trump has made them legitimate again, which is like so sick and so fucking crazy, and he's reversed it. So that's why Trump sucks now, because the great thing that he did when he got elected, it wasn't him, it was like everything that happened, has been completely reversed. And he's made, like I said before, my earlier video, he made these people be able to tell the truth again, because now the truth about Trump is the truth. Even though they've been lying about him for years, they're now legitimized. And that's, And so the title of this video, Striking the Lengths at which Trump administration is trying to squash leaks. Anybody who disagrees with Trump, anybody who tells Trump the truth, is kicked out and ostracized by these people. And they all know it, right?
In rewriting this memo, are serving a White House aide, Stephen Miller, who speculated about repealing habeas corpus altogether over large parts of the country for all people.
All right, we get it, dude. It's these life-sucking fucks that have sucked for years. Horrible. All of the people, their pundits and everything that CNN represents are now truth tellers again, which fucking blows. I mean, it just fucking blows, because they don't deserve that, right? Jake Tapper writing that book when, they're late to the party and they're saying shit that's, I mean, it still sucks. It's still lame. It's still, bare bones, basic shit. They're all basic, right? But they get to say the stuff, and now it's not fake anymore. And so fuck Trump for doing that, right? Okay, so this happened.
And we're not going to be taking
Mr. President, on Apple, you said this morning that if they don't make their iPhones in the U.S., you're going to hit them with a 25% tariff.
Right.
Do you have the power to tariff one single company? And why would you
No,
want to
it'll
hurt
be
an
more.
American company in that way?
It would be more. It would be also Samsung and anybody that makes that product. Otherwise, it wouldn't be fair. So anybody that makes that product, and that'll start on, I guess, the end of June. It'll come out. I think we have that appropriately done by the end of June. So
Okay, so I have a clip. I'm not going to go get it. It's on the TV, and I might show it in my next video. I don't know. But it is somebody from MSNBC, I believe, or another show on CNN, I don't know which, that echoes what those guys that were on the Aaron Burnett show said, that to manufacture a cell phone in America the cell phones would cost $3,000. They have to build factories and do all these types of things, knowing full well that after Trump is done, his whole agenda is gone. Trump will be gone in 4 years, and all the Trump shit will be gone with him, and the MAGA people will be, demonized and blamed and all the shit, right? Marginalized. There's going to be, it's whatever civil war is going on, whatever real war is going on, whatever is fucking happening with the economic collapse. All these things. But, these companies know that this is short-lived. The tariffs and these policies are short-lived. And so to move their companies all the way over here, again, is unsustainable and stupid. Like, nobody should invest this chaotic fuck, right? Like, he's just, he's just unhinged. and he's emotional, and he's a fucking twat, and he's a fucking, he's the worst of the worst, right? It's kind of funny what he's doing because it's not presidential, which I always appreciate. But if you're a business person, you can't count on him. And so none of them are going to bring their companies here. And they can't charge, $3,000 an iPhone. I mean, the things are like $1,200 now or whatever they are, right? And so it's going to be 2 or 3 times as much. That's going to be like 2.5 times as much. And people aren't going to pay that because it's going to be everything. It's going to be everything that's going to go up because of these tariffs. When the tariffs fully kick in and all the factors kick in. And so, it's just a dope. Okay, so I got a bunch of other things to get to here, but I'm not going to did such a long narration in the beginning, which I think is more important or whatever, right? But look at this guy. Look at this fucking guy. So I saw this 4 or 5 days ago, and then it segued. It was on autoplay, and my phone went right from this to the interview that he's talking here. This is a CNN report of the interview. And then I saw something yesterday about his popularity. But Elon Musk is a clear example of what Trump does to people. So there are people that you're going to meet, very few of them, that they lift you up. And the biggest example of this is a spiritual master or a saint or someone of higher developed soul. I mean, there's people, legitimate Christians out there, who have connected to Jesus on a spiritual level, and he's actually lifted them up. Many of them, I don't know how many of them, and so, but some number. And other Christian saints that have done that. And of course, globally, higher developed souls have lifted people up spiritually, and that's the ultimate. But then there's other people who will help you, like a counselor or an elder, and they'll pick you up and they'll help you through a difficult situation. And your experiences of them is that your life is better, right? That after meeting these people, after they've affected your life, you're a better person, you're better off. They've elevated you in some way. And that could be materially, it could be spiritually, it could be emotionally, it could be knowledge, right? But in some way, you look at a person, you think about people in your life, and you're like, all right, these people brought me down. Like these people affected me negatively. And that's the majority of people. And unless you take everything with gratitude and from God, and even the negative people affect you positively. Like my ex was a horrible person for me in various ways, and our relationship and all of it sucked, but I benefited so much spiritually from it. I mean, even from Kamlish, him destroying heartfulness, I've benefited from that. So, if you take the right attitude, everybody can elevate you. But, in many cases, you have the people who, most people, the experience, you have the people who pull you up and the people who pull you down. And if you look at Donald Trump, the majority of people, you think about all the people, Rachel Maddow or somebody did a report about this, I think it was before the election, about how all the people that Donald Trump has affected, and it was something that I was already talking about, but there are people who are now in prison, who have lost their jobs, who have lost their reputations, who've written books about him, people who've lost their careers, who work for Donald Trump, people he threw under the bus, right? People like, Michael Cohen and Chris Christie, and just people who were Trump loyalists, and then Trump needed them to fall on their sword. And, all these people that work for Trump, they're all going to suffer this fate here. This is what Trump does to people. It's what he does to companies. What he does to his spouses. All these people, they're much worse after having a relationship with him. And this guy.
I think in terms of political spending, I'm going to do a lot less in the future.
And why is that?
I think I've done enough.
Nobody wants your fucking money, bro. He's become a cancer.
Is it because of blowback?
Well, if I see a reason to do political spending in the future, I will do it. I do not currently see a reason.
Well, there you go. The world's richest man.
Look at how happy she is. They do not give a shit that Trump is destroying them. They're just so happy to be, relevant again.
Advisor to the president announcing he will be dialing it back on campaign spending. Elon Musk spent $290 million in the 2024 election. And
remember this guy jumping around?
He did not endorse Donald Trump until after the assassination attempt in July. And it comes after Tesla has had a rocky few months, to say the least. Its net income dropped 71% from the year before. Musk has admitted his political involvement, particularly with Doge, was impacting his companies.
Doge.
Running your other businesses.
With great difficulty.
Yeah, it is, right? It's the Trump effect, right? He's suffering from the Trump effect.
Yeah, I mean... But there's no turning back, you're saying?
I'm just here trying to make government more efficient.
He was...
Boom, look at she's happy. I mean, not... Yeah. She's happy, you know.
He's also becoming a political liability. A poll from ABC and the Washington Post found his disapproval rating growing. So let's discuss this. My panel is back with me. Sochi, first to you. Why do you think he made this announcement now? And it was interesting because he sort of said it that he had to be prodded into explaining his rationale behind it.
Well, it seems like a business. You know, this is what he's doing. He committed to in the same interview, he committed to being the CEO of Tesla moving forward. There had been talks about him potentially stepping down before. Then therefore he had to commit to maybe I'll back off on political spending. What I heard in Wisconsin from a lot of people is that his involvement there didn't actually help. It hurt the candidate there. And so I think that you probably have a lot of frontliners right now, Republican frontliners, who are saying, wait a minute. Maybe I'll take your money. No, please don't campaign here. Last thing they want is ads running in these.
Look at Van Jones smiling here, right? So, on every level, he's suffering, like his life is worse.
States saying so-and-so is funded by Elon Musk. Elon Musk is pouring money into this state. That doesn't help any Republican at this point. So if you're Elon Musk, you're focused on making money, you're focused on your businesses, and you're just taking a step back because you do not want to be in the fray.
You mentioned the
Yeah, we just heard him say that. You just basically said, other than the thing that he's not helping candidates, everything else is exactly what he said, Elon Musk said. Right? You just rephrased it.
the special election in Wisconsin. I want to play some of the voter sound from that election about Elon Musk.
Does Mr. Musk have an effect on your vote?
Yes.
Yes, he does.
A lot of people are really hostile and like, oh my gosh, he's buying the election and this should be illegal. And it probably should be illegal to offer people money to vote a certain way.
Maybe he should be taking care of his own business instead of everybody else's.
Exactly. Maybe he should be.
So, Van, at one point the Democrat strategy was to make Musk the focus, right? What is the Democrat strategy if he does indeed step back?
Well, I mean, I don't think that he's going to fade. Look, Elon Musk is determined. He's not like a normal business person. He thinks that humanity has to become transhuman and get to Mars. He's not joking. He really believes that. And so he's trying to drill holes in monkeys' heads and put computers in there and all kind of stuff.
Like you can computers in there, is that what you're saying? Like you don't understand transhumanism? The whole computer, are they? You mean chips?
And if he thinks that the United States government is going to get in the way of his grand transhuman moon Mars mission, he will get back involved. And I won't be too sad if he does, because this is weird stuff, man. You send a bunch of
weird stuff, man.
Kids into the federal government with laptops to steal all the data and do all kind of weird stuff and lay off all kind of people in East Tennessee. Women who used to help people with special needs can't help them because Elon Musk doesn't want to. He is a gold mine for us. He's a platinum mine for us. We ain't gonna let him go. If he wants to close up, if he gives one penny to anybody, we're running an ad. We are running an ad.
Boom. Okay. So this guy who loved Joe Biden cried when Joe Biden had to step down and all that stuff when he had to say, maybe it's time for him to step down, remember? But anyways, Elon Musk, we'll go to the interview here. Let's go to the interview.
Please welcome to the forum, Elon Musk, for a conversation with Bloomberg's Michelle Hussein.
Boom, Michelle Hussein. It's It's Hussein and Musk together again.
Hello, everyone. And Elon Musk, welcome to Qatar Economic Forum. How are you?
Boy, bro, what happened?
Thank you for having me. I'm fine.
It's like he's got like, he's either a really bad shaver or he's going for a really weird look.
How are you?
Very well, thank you, and very pleased to have you with us. You know, among those here in the audience in Doha are some you will know, people who have backed you financially over the years. Since you last spoke here in 2022, a lot has changed in your life. You're not only running multiple companies, you were doing that then, but now you also have a role in government. So first of all, I hope you won't mind if from time to time I have to move you from one topic to another because we have a lot to cover in the time.
Well, fuck you, bitch. I just want to talk about my cocker spaniel.
We have. That will be all right? Okay.
Yeah,
well, let's start then with exactly the fact that you now have this combination of being a CEO and having a role as a government advisor. Tell me about your week. How does it work? What's the split of your time?
Well, I travel a lot. So I was in Silicon Valley yesterday morning. I was in...
And then I went to Starbucks, and then went out to get Korean food, and then I went back to Silicon Valley. I was in there, Silicon Valley, the whole time.
Yesterday evening. I'm in Austin right now. I'll be in D.C. tomorrow. I'll be there having dinner with the president tomorrow night, I believe. And then...
Name dropper.
A whole bunch of cabinet secretary meetings, and then back to Silicon Valley on Thursday night.
Boom. Very busy. A lot of traveling.
I mean, the balance of your time, is it, well, clearly it's a lot, but is it still the case, as you said a while ago, that it's about 1 to 2 days a week on your government work?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yep, that's correct. 2 days. I'm going to save $1 trillion, 2 days a week for, eternity.
And what does that mean for your corporate life? Because if we start with Tesla, the company has suffered in recent months what you've called blowback. So
Blowback.
What
She knows about blowback.
is your plan for turning that around, the declining sales picture, and by what stage do you think you're going to be able to turn it around?
Oh, it's already turned around.
Everything's going great. You haven't heard? It's like fucking our business is booming. It's just everything's great. Everything's wonderful. There's no problems here. Everything's going. Everyone loves me. The company's doing great. Fucking no issues. I've saved $1 trillion at Doge. Minus 800 million, and
Give me some evidence for that. I've just been looking at the sales figures for Europe in April, which show very significant declines in the big markets.
Europe is our weakest market. We're strong everywhere else.
we're pretty strong everywhere else. We got good sales.
So no, our sales are doing well at this point. We don't anticipate any meaningful sales shortfall, and obviously the stock market recognizes that, since we're now back over $1 trillion in market cap. So
Not so fast, bro. Things have gone south again for you a little bit. The Trump effect here is, and he's trying to distance himself from Trump, and Trump wants him to, Trump likes him as a shield, but also they're going to blame a lot of this stuff on Elon. The whole thing became about Elon and not Trump. And, on every level, his business life, his popularity, his customer base, his brand took a major hit. All of these things, right? So let's say he could be successful in taking down wasteful governmental spending. You're going to make a shit ton of enemies. Now, first of all, people are taking advantage of the government, sucking off the government teat all across industry and, military industrial complex and, everybody everywhere. It's just what happens when you have collective money that's just not very scrutinized, and you have corruption and, double dealing and backdoor dealing, all that shit. And, he'll go after people who are in line with democratic policies, but there are things that companies that Trump is friendly with, they have Trump's ear. And Trump isn't going to let Elon, and Elon would know better than to go after those parts of the government that are giving money to, businesses like his. Like he got a shit ton of money from businesses, right? From the government. And so, there's all of that shit. And then there's all the enemies you're going to make and all the pushback and all of it. And even if he cut all the waste and just turned a deaf ear to all the complaining, it's still, like he said, at best it'd be $1 trillion. And we're still going to add another $2 trillion to our debt. And then there's the whole nightmare and this destabilization of the government that's going to come with it. So it's a failure. The Doge thing was always going to be a failure. And it was never, other than some looting they were going to do or whatever they were going to do. But he still ended up pissing everybody off, especially the liberals who buy his cars. And then everything has collapsed around him. And this is what Trump does to people. He just pulls them down and, they get worn out and tired and Trump throws them under the bus because that's what Trump does. And so I'm going to wrap this one up here. But, we get it, right? Only spirituality will save this world. Its power model definitely points to the apocalypse and the ascension. I would have a blessed day and be grateful.